Hello and welcome to another video, and today I'm going to be going over the gubernatorial elections with Democrats currently having 20 and Republicans 19. Those are the ones that aren't at play. Democrats would have 31 seats in the Governors National Association if they took every single one here, and Republicans would have 30. So let's get into this with the Utah gubernatorial elections, where we have Gary Herbert. He's the current governor of Utah. So this was his final time running. In 2016, he won handedly, and there was basically no competition. So the lieutenant governor was Spencer Cox, and he's basically running for the Republican Party. And it's not only him that's running. There's also Greg Hughes. He's the former Speaker of the Utah House of Representatives. We have John Huntsman Jr. He was the former governor of Utah. We have Thomas Wright. He was an RNC executive committee member and former chair of the Utah Republican Party. So that's pretty interesting. We have a lot of notable names in the Utah Republican Party actually trying to win the nomination, but I think that the competition is mostly between Spencer Cox and John Huntsman Jr. I do think that John Huntsman's Jr.'s popularity and name recognition will help him win over Spencer Cox in the primary. I'm pretty sure he has a slight edge as of now. The polling data shows that basically it's pretty close. We have the convention results, which is pretty interesting. We have John Huntsman Jr. getting eliminated in round 2. I don't really think that means anything because the primary wasn't held yet, so I don't think that matters. But here we have the Democratic primary, and there's everybody was already eliminated, but Christopher Peterson, he really had no opposition. He's a law professor from the University of Utah, so that's pretty interesting, but he just doesn't have enough name recognition to win this, especially in the safe Republican states. So I do think that whoever the Republican nominee is, it won't really matter. They'll win the states. So then we have the Washington gubernatorial race. We have Jay Inslee. He narrowly won here. He only won by 9%, and this is a safe Democratic state. That's a likely margin. And before that, he only won by 3%. So the Democrats have a pretty bad track record in the states. It was very close in 2004, which I think is interesting, but it's important to look at who the candidates are this time. We have Jay Inslee, who has already won, and we have Tim Eyman. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. We have Phil Fortunato, and he's a state senator. I think that this time around it will be safe for the Democrats. I don't see any of these candidates as doing as well as Bill Bryant. I don't know if he had that much name recognition. Oh, he really didn't. He was a former Seattle Port Commissioner, but it's pretty compelling evidence, I guess. So I do think that it will go by a likely margin. I do think that there's such a heavy Republican presence, especially in gubernatorial elections, that Republicans will only lose by like 12 to 13%, something like that. And then I'm going to go to North Dakota. Let's see, where's North Dakota? Here. Okay, so the Republican candidate most likely is going to be Doug Burgum. He won here by a very, very large margin in 2016. and before him, uh, the Republican also won by a super large margin. So that's already a pretty good advantage for him. He's also the incumbent governor. So the Democratic Party has Shelley Lenz, who's a veterinarian, as their candidates. I think that just shows that it's going to be a safe Republican states. Here's some hypothetical polling. Basically, like the only Democrat in North Dakota who even has a chance at anything at any election is still losing to Doug Burgum by 29 points. So that's pretty bad for them. So I'm just going to be characterizing this state as a Republican safe state. I'm going to go to West Virginia. Let's X out of all of these. West Virginia, the the governor here was Jim Justice, and he was a Democrat, but then he interestingly switched parties and became a Republican. So I think that's pretty interesting. I think that he's probably gonna win the Republican primary. You could have like Woody Trasher winning. He's contending with Jim Justice in polling and also Mike Volk. But I do think that Jim Justice just being the incumbent governor will help him. I don't think that any of the Democrats will actually do well this time around, but Democrats, but a Democrat was able to get elected in 2016, so I do think there will be a lot of leftover voters that will still vote for Democrats in the states. We have Stephen Smith, who's apparently leading in here. There's Ron Stallings and Ben Salango. I do think that just because we have no information, Stephen Smith will win. But maybe Ron Stallings, he's a state senator. I do think that just because of the fact that there was a Democratic governor and then he switched to a Republican governor, there's going to be many people who are still going to vote for the Democrats. But Jim Justice just being the incumbent and a Republican in a safe Republican state will be enough to carry him uh, over the edge to win this election. And then we're going to go to Delaware. Delaware, we have John Carney running again. He won by a pretty large amount, 19% in 2016. So it's going to be very hard to see him losing this time around. And in 2012, the same thing happened, big margins for the Democrats. So in 2020, we have John Carney running again. Oh, okay, so from what I'm seeing here, I was assuming that he'd run for re-election. But from what this shows here, we have John Carney, who's the incumbent governor of Delaware, and then only one person on the ballot until now, David Lamar Williams Jr., which I think that's pretty interesting. I remember seeing that, but I just forgot about that when I started talking right now when the video started. But I do think that he will join the race. I see no reason for him not to. I don't know. I think he'll just continue. I don't see any reason for him not to. So even if he doesn't win, or if he doesn't even run, I do still think that it will be safe Democrat. Okay, so now I'm gonna go to Indiana. Let's see here, Indiana's gubernatorial election. We have Eric Holcomb against Woody Myers, and he's the incumbent governor, Eric Holcomb. He won by 6% last time, so that's pretty bad. But I think he was the Yeah, he was the majority leader in the House in the Indiana House of Representatives. Mike Pence, he almost lost to John R. Gregg, which is kind of interesting. He was not. Mike Pence was not the most popular governor. He was very unpopular. We have Woody Myers. He's like the only person on the ballot for the Democratic primary. You basically have Democrats backing him, and here this one poll shows Eric Holcomb leading by 20 points. But the fact that this race was so close makes me think that there will still be some voters going to the Democrats, even if not that much. I do think that Eric Holcomb will win this state. So I think it will probably be by a likely margin, maybe like 14%, 13%, something like that. It could be a safe state. I just am thinking that it probably won't. I think that a very interesting state is Missouri. The Missouri gubernatorial election. We have Mike Parson, who's the incumbent governor. He only won well, it's a different candidate. I understand that, but we have Mike Parson, who's the incumbent governor of Missouri, and he's going to have to go up against Sandra McDowell and Jim Neely in the Republican primary and Riley Ritter. I really don't see any of them having a chance. Mike Parson beats the former governor. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. And yeah, Mike Parson was endorsed by Donald Trump, so he has a massive advantage in the primary. So I think he will be the person who wins his in the primary. And then we have Nicole Galloway. She's the Missouri State she's an auditor in Missouri, so that's pretty good for her. She was actually elected. Let me see if I have that up here. Yeah, she beat Sandra McDowell, she's the Republican who's going up against Mike Parson this time. She beat Sandra McDowell in the 2018 Missouri State Auditor election, which is pretty interesting. And it was by a likely margin by 6%, which is pretty interesting. It was a pretty close race, but you see Nicole Galloway actually won here. So I do think that's interesting. She does have a track record of winning, and I do agree with Politico that it will be a lean Republican state. Here's some of the polling from the state. We have like Mike Parson up by 11, 13, 11. Then you have like these ones that are like having 19% undecided. So you just keep on going. You have here the past two polls showing him up by 13 points. I do think that Nicole Galloway will be able to narrow the margin. She actually is leading against the former Missouri governor, but Parson is actually leading against Jason Kander, which is interesting. But I do think it will be close. I think Democrats have a shot at this state as of now, but I do think that Mike Parson has the advantage. So now I'm going to go to Montana. Actually, no, I'm going to save that one for last. I'm going to go to Vermont. Vermont is interesting because it's a safe Democratic state, but Phil Scott, a Republican, is the current governor of Vermont, and he's running again for re-election. He hasn't actually publicly announced that, but what it says here is that he's fundraising for it. I think that's pretty interesting. Let's look at the previous election results. He won by a safe margin of 15 points, which is pretty good. And before that, it was kind of close, but he's running again. And from what I see, David Zuckerman is probably going to be the candidate who goes up against him. He's actually the lieutenant governor, which is a bit awkward because he's like it's kind of like being the vice president, being the lieutenant governor, which is so you have like the Republican being as the governor, and then like the Democrat as the lieutenant governor. I do think he'll win here, and David Zuckerman is losing here in this one poll. I don't think that really has much credibility because you have so many people undecided. So I do think that this will be a lean state. Let's look at here the results from this. I want to see how he did in the. I want to see how Zuckerman did in the lieutenant governor elections. I really don't think there's a way to see those results. I looked through Ballotpedia. If anybody does know, then please share it. Republicans are narrowly gonna hold the state. It's a governor versus lieutenant governor situation. I do think that Phil Scott will stay. I think he's doing well with the voters there. They don't really dislike him. I think he will stay for another term. Okay, we have New Hampshire, and this is we have Kristen. He won here by around 7% in 2018, and in 2016 he only won by 2%. So this is not he's not doing that well from what we could see from the previous results. Here we have Dan Felt, the majority leader in the New Hampshire Senate, and we have Andrew Volinsky. I think he's going to win here. And from what I see, these polls are just not reliable. So many people are undecided. You have like the Democrats at like 27 and 37, and like the Republicans in the 50s. That's not really most reliable, especially so far out. And it is a swing state, and I do think that the fact that it's during an election year will favor the Democrats, because I do think that Democrats will take the states. Here we have Kristen in 2016 only narrowly winning, and then like in 2018 he did way better, mostly because it wasn't the presidential election year. So I do think that Republicans will narrowly hold on to the states by a leaning margin. And now I'm going to go to the two most contested elections. First, I'm going to start off with North Carolina. North Carolina has Roy Cooper and Dan Forest. Well, Roy Cooper is the incumbent. He only won by 0.2% last time, and Pat McCrory, he won by 11 points in 2012. So Roy Cooper actually ousted the incumbent, which I think is one of the reasons why it was so close. I think he'll actually win this time. Here we have Roy Cooper. He got around 1.3 million votes in the primary, and then here you have Dan Forest, who only got like 800,000 voters in the primary. I think that heavily favors Roy Cooper. All of these polls have him leading by, this one has him leading by double digits. Seeing here, 20%, 27%, 13%. It's a lot. I think that Dan Forest will still end up doing well. I think that, yeah, he currently serves as the lieutenant governor, which is pretty funny because they're from opposing parties, and one of them is the governor and the other is the lieutenant governor, and they're both running against each other. But I do think that Roy Cooper has a slight advantage in the states. I think he will take it by a leaning margin. I think that Donald Trump will help Dan Forest in the states, just that I think that Donald Trump has a slight advantage in the state, and that will just help the Republicans down ballots, but I don't think it will be enough. And now the most heavily contested race, the Montana gubernatorial election. So we have Mike Cooney, who's probably going to win the Democratic primary. He's the lieutenant governor of Montana, and he was the former Secretary of State of Montana. So he's probably going to win here Mike Cooney, he's endorsed by John Tester, which is pretty good, and also Steve Bullock, mostly because he's the running mate of, he was Steve Bullock's running mate in 2016. So he was already elected as lieutenant governor, and Greg Gianforte, he's most likely going to be the Republican nominee. And Greg Gianforte, he is endorsed by Donald Trump Jr., so presumably he's going to be endorsed by Donald Trump. But I think that Tim Fox has a good chance of winning here. It would be better for the Republicans if Fox won, but Greg Gianforte has so much name recognition, and he is a representative from Montana's at-large district. I'm going to go to the 2018 elections here. Yeah, Greg Gianforte only won by 4 points, which is pretty bad for the Republicans in the state. Greg Gianforte, he's a uniquely unpopular politician in the state. He was the person who actually lost to Steve Bullock last time, and Steve Bullock actually won here in 2012 as well. So Greg Gianforte is a pretty bad candidate for the Republicans. I think that Tim Fox would be better, but I think Greg Gianforte is going to win. So that's basically against Mike Cooney. He's actually leading in this poll. We have 16% of the voters undecided. So I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. I do think that this will be very close, but Mike Cooney will take the state. He has name recognition. He's a lieutenant governor in the state. He's just well known. He's pretty liked. Greg Gianforte already lost, so he has a track record of losing, and Mike Cooney has name recognition, and he's on track to win. I think it'll be very close. Greg Gianforte, by all means, could take the states, but I do think that the Democrats have a slight advantage in the states. So here we have Republicans with 26 governors and the Democrats with 24 governors. I think this might be a gain for the... No, I don't think that the Democrats had any gains. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, and bye.